We finally have made it. Thank you guys so much for your support. 23 videos later, and the Infinity Saga Rewatch review series is finally coming to an end. You guys are absolutely incredible. Anyways, remember before this movie came out when everyone was debating whether or not Mysterio was the villain? And we were like, hey, well, maybe he's actually going to be a hero because the trailers were like, oh, the multiverse, I'm a good guy, blah, 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 blah. Well, we were all wrong. He's not the villain of Far From Home. You know who is? Brad. For the final time in this Infinity Saga Rewatch series, spoiler alert, because we're going to be dropping some massive spoilers and plot reveals for Spider-Man Far From Home, so you've been warned. Is this the true end of Phase 3? In my opinion, kind of, but not really. Like, if I were Kevin Feige, I actually would not have made this the end of Phase 3. Honestly, and again, I know this has no bearing on the movie itself, just indulge me for a second, but I would have been a lot happier if Endgame were the end of Phase 3, because this movie just kind of doesn't feel like a Phase 3 ending. I know they say it's an epilogue, it just kind of feels more like a launching pad for Phase 4. I guess it's a nice little bridge between the two, which I appreciate, but I don't think it's part of Phase 3. Doesn't really feel like it fits in either phase, it's sort of just the bridge that connects the two. Anyways, all that aside, it's not relevant to the movie, let's talk about it. So, yeah, Spider-Man Far From Home is pretty darn good. It's really good. Now, a lot of people complain, or at least mention in their reviews and their analysis of this movie, that the opening doesn't really feel like a Spider-Man movie. It feels more like a teen comedy. To that I say, is that a problem? Because I really don't care about that. And here's the reason why. The opening of this film is clearly not about Spider-Man, although we do get to see some Spider-Man. And I know that there was a huge action scene that was cut, and I think it's actually a really good thing that it was cut, because the focus of this opening, like 30 or 20 minutes, is not Spider-Man again, it's Peter Parker. We see a Peter Parker who's broken. I mean, he's trying to hold it all together, but he has this really big crush on this girl, Zendaya, who plays MJ, and he's dealing with the loss of his mentor, Tony Stark. He doesn't want to be Spider-Man. And do you blame him after everything that he's been through in Infinity War and Endgame? What Jon Watts, the director of this film, does so well is balance Peter Parker and Spider-Man. It's something that the previous two iterations have kind of struggled to do. I think Tobey Maguire was a stronger Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield may have been a stronger Spider-Man, but they just never seem to really mesh together well. In Venice, when Hydra Man, or the Elemental, or whatever he is, decides to show up, Peter just wants to enjoy his vacation, but you can see that he wants to serve his duty as an Avenger or as a superhero to help out. That's why he kind of puts on that little mask and he just runs around trying to help Mysterio save the world from the Elemental, even though he's on vacation. And that's why he gets recruited by Nick Fury anyways, because it's his responsibility. He feels like it's an obligation that he has these powers to go and help. It's really that tug of war that makes Spider-Man such a relatable character. It's beautifully done and it drives him throughout this entire movie. And that's why at the beginning, when it's just Peter and Ned talking about their trip, talking about MJ, talking about Flash, talking about Brad, talking about their vacation, how they're gonna have so much fun, it just makes it that much better later when Peter has to leave it all behind to become Spider-Man, because this is Peter Parker. So again, I have zero complaints with the opening being about Peter and not about Spider-Man. I don't care that it doesn't feel like a Spider-Man movie, because Peter Parker is just as important as Spider-Man. Another part of this movie that is just so incredibly integral, and it's not quite the same as it was in Spider-Man Homecoming, is the relationship between MJ and Peter Parker. The character of MJ, played by Zendaya, has a much more prominent role in this movie, and really Peter Parker's, struggle for humanity, struggle to stay sane, to be normal, is really centered around his love and his crush on MJ. And again, this isn't a new plot device for a Spider-Man film. We've seen this time and time again with the original Spider-Man films and also with the Amazing Spider-Man reboot with Gwen Stacy, but it is just a pivotal part of his character. What it ultimately comes down to is, does it work? Does their relationship and chemistry work? And I am happy to say, at least in my opinion, it does in spades. Peter and MJ's relationship in this film is insanely good. And again, that's one of the things that you just buy about Peter Parker, and it just makes him such a more relatable character. And that's what helped Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker a lot more in The Amazing Spider-Man, was his relationship to Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy. MJ, though I didn't like her that much in Spider-Man Homecoming, is so much more likable in the quirky sense. She's so charming and awkward in all the right ways in a teen comedy, and I think it just works so well with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Because again, Spider-Man movies are supposed to show the vulnerabilities of being a kid, about being Peter Parker, just as much as it is about being Spider-Man, and that's what this film does so well. In the first movie, it was about proving himself to Tony Stark. In this movie, it's more about getting over the loss of Tony Stark, as well as moving on with his life and growing up. Speaking of Iron Man, though, he does admittedly have a pretty big presence in the movie. Obviously, he doesn't actually show up, but Edith is a big part of the movie, and so is he. Honestly, I'm okay with it. Maybe I'm not thrilled by it, and a lot of people have said, well, maybe it's just time to move on from Tony Stark with Spider-Man character and just make him, his own superhero. Because of Homecoming, he was a big part of Homecoming. In Infinity War, he's the Iron Spider suit. And I kind of tend to agree with that, but I think this is just the right mix for now. I think Spider-Man 3, no, not that one, should kind of tend more towards being just a Peter Parker story. No more Iron Man in his story. You know who I was bothered by, and this leads right into my next point, is the characters. I was bothered a lot by Nick Fury. Now, again, I get it. It's Talos. I get it. But there are just some really awkwardly delivered lines from Samuel L. Jackson. Maybe he knew he was a Skrull and he was intentionally trying to deliver his lines a little bit differently. I get it, but it just doesn't feel like either Talos or Nick Fury. First of all, why is he just yelling at Spider-Man the entire movie? When I first saw this film, that was one of the things that stood out to me like a sore thumb, is Talos Nick Fury just going, hey, you're an Avenger. Step up, kid. I'm your dad. I'm yelling at you. I'm like your parent. Why are you not, living up to your potential? He reminded me a lot like Iron Man in Spider-Man Homecoming, but these two characters aren't really filling the same role, right? Iron Man was the mentor figure. Nick Fury is just supposed to be like the recruiter, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., or whatever they are doing right now. S.W.O.R.D., I guess. Maria Hill was fine. She was there, didn't really do much, but Colby Smulders is great as always. And the side characters, the high school characters, Ned, Flash, Brad, Betty, the classmates, Mr. Harrington, love them. I love how much color they add to this world and just how much more realistic they make this film seem. It is a high school film still, and I just love these characters. Now, speaking of characters, let's talk about Mysterio. Hopefully, Yon-Rogg will be the last time that I bring up Bash the MCU villain, even in future MCU reviews in Phase 4 and Phase 5, because I think Mysterio is pretty good. Is he as good as the Vulture? I don't think so. And yes, does John Watts sort of copy the mold of the disgruntled ex-Stark employee? Yeah, he does. And I really hope Kraven the Hunter, or whoever the Spider-Man 3, nope, not that Spider-Man 3 villain is, he's not a disgruntled Stark employee, because that would just be a little bit annoying at this point. But still, Quentin Beck has a motivation, he has a reason for doing what he's doing. John Watts understands, just like the Russo brothers, that having an understandable, relatable villain with a relatable motivation is super important in conveying realism with these characters. And I think Mysterio does that extremely well. Again, is he a little bit comic booky, cartoony, maniacal?
No, fire all the drones now!
Nope, never crossed my mind. But I have to say, I'm impressed. The fishbowl, it works. It somehow works. And I kind of love how a superhero suit is just a CGI motion capture suit. That's honestly pretty funny and pretty clever. And side note, I really hope he's still alive. Because guys, we were doing so well in building up these villains for the Sinister Six. He kept Vulture alive. I was super happy about that. And I think Watts left it intentionally ambiguous enough to where maybe he could be alive or maybe he could be dead. When Edith says all the drones are destroyed or whatever, he doesn't really say that Quentin Beck is dead, or whoever this person is. He's not Quentin Beck, that's not his real name. Anyways, yeah, I'm just really hoping he's still alive. I love Gyllenhaal in this role. And finally, the main character, Peter Parker, played by Tom Holland. Again, he's amazing. What else is there to say? He plays Peter Parker and Spider-Man so well, and he just does such a great job of making Peter Parker and Spider-Man feel like the same character, but also these two different sides of that character that feel distinct and yet feel very similar. And also, he has great chemistry with Ned and MJ. He has some great banter with Nick Fury and Mysterio. All of it is great. Oh, and I guess we got to talk about May and Happy, I guess. They're fine. The only reason that Happy's in the movie is to save Peter later on in the field. But whatever, it's cute, it's fun, not consequential at all, but yeah, it's there. One of the biggest strengths of this movie, though, in my opinion, is the action. And I feel like, especially for this movie, that a lot of people take the action for granted. We just saw Endgame, everyone's minds were blown. But seriously, guys, this action in this movie is some of the best in the entire MCU. Like, not just action in general, but specifically Spider-Man action. I get it, we're more comfortable with Peter Parker in New York, but putting him in these different locations, you get to see him swing around in Venice and England. It's just really great stuff. The cinematography and the choreography, excellent. Now, one of the biggest problems that I have with this movie is the Edith sort of subplot. Because again, this movie doesn't really do anything majorly spectacular, so it just may seem like I'm praising this movie and not giving it any criticisms, but really I don't have too many. The one thing I will say is Edith. I think Edith is a little bit awkward. Now I get it, the point of this movie and the plot is, deception, illusion, believing in something, believing in lies, believing in truths, just having something to believe in. I get it, I like that sort of allegory. I just think that the way Edith was introduced into this movie and sort of shoved in there, like these random pair of glasses and you've got to give it to Mysterio, I don't know if I like that much. I admit right now that it's just some of the most awkward stuff in the movie. Like, the fact that Peter Parker just kind of hands over these sunglasses or whatever they are to Mysterio in that bar, it just felt a little bit clunky. Again, everything relating to Nick Fury and handing over the glasses and all that sort of stuff didn't work quite as well as I would have liked to. Although, that bar scene is pretty amazing. I mean, again, it is corny, it is so cheesy. Mysterio, Quentin Beck, Jake Gyllenhaal just giving that speech. It is really corny, but it somehow works. I really like how he invented barf. I really like how they brought the Tony Stark built this in a cave guy. I just think that was a really, really smart move on Marvel's part. Again, bottom line, what really sold me on this movie though was not Edith. It wasn't Tony Stark's legacy. It was rather Peter Parker struggling with his want to be Peter Parker or his duties and responsibilities to be Spider-Man. Other than that, negatives? No, that's about it. This is a more subjective thing, I guess, and I think maybe some people may not like this as much. But I guess the tone of this movie and sort of the pacing is super breezy, and it may feel shallow at some points. Like, there's only one really heavy moment in the film where Peter is talking to Happy about Tony, which I think is a great scene, by the way. But other than that, it's really a very breezy, light sort of film. Maybe some people won't like that. Then again, maybe a lot of people will, especially after Endgame. I personally think it's one of the best parts of this movie. It's just such a joyride from beginning to end. It just makes you feel so happy about being a Spider-Man fan. Guys, in the end, Spider-Man Far From Home fits right in with the John Watts, Tom Holland series of films. It's breezy, so much fun, funny, heartwarming, action-packed, and just so enjoyable and entertaining. I love these Spider-Man movies so much. Their youthful energy, charm, charisma, and just ability to make Spider-Man a fun character, while delivering a great villain, great action, great conflicts, both external and internal, is so masterfully done. Bravo, John Watts. I cannot wait to see what you do with Spider-Man 3. No, not that one. And hey, maybe at that point the multiverse will actually not be a lie and it'll actually exist. Wink, wink. I'll give Spider-Man Far From Home an A and a 9.3 out of 10.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker. What the
language?
And with that, guys, the Infinity Saga Rewatch and Review series has come to an end. Thank you guys so much for your support. It has meant the absolute world to me. If you're new to the channel and you want to see some of the older Infinity Saga Rewatch videos, I put the link to that playlist in the description down below, and you can find that on my channel page as well. Up next, guys, we got some really exciting videos that I think you all are going to really like. We got some rankings. We got some other really fun videos that I cannot wait to share with you guys. It's going to be a lot of Infinity Saga for the next couple weeks, and then maybe we'll move on to some other fun videos. If you guys have any suggestions, leave them in the comments down below. In the meantime, what did you guys think of Spider-Man Far From Home? Do you guys think it's better than Homecoming, or do you think Homecoming is still the best MCU Spider-Man solo film? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you haven't subscribed already, then make sure to do so and leave a like on this video to support the channel. I am so grateful again for all the support you guys have left on these videos. If you want to check out some more videos, then check out the videos on the screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.